British pensioner David Hunter spent 19 months behind bars in Cyprus after killing the love of his life, Janice, in what they believed would end her suffering.
And having been convicted of manslaughter, the 76-year-old former miner has now been released from prison. And in his first TV interview, he's speaking exclusively to Good Morning Britain. And David Hunter joins us now from Cyprus. Good morning, Mr. Hunter. You've been through, the most terrible time, the court case, those months in prison, the tragic loss of your wife, Janice. Before we come to talking about those events and also the assisted dying debate that you've been contributing to, just tell us about Janice. You had a fabulous, happy marriage for very many years together. When you look back now, what are the happiest memories that you remember about Janice? How do you remember her? How does the family think of her? Tell us the kind of person she was.
Oh, she had a fantastic smile. And she was always busy, she always meeting friends. But I think the best years of her life were spent here. 16 years before she took ill. And that took its toll. But the 16 best years we ever had was definitely here,
And you...
when she started to get ill...
Carry on,
Sorry?
David. No, do carry on.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, David, you were just going to say about when she got ill, how everything changed.
Yeah, changed everything. She had to be put on injections, and she was taking two a week. We were taking it on a Monday and Thursday. I was doing the injections, but sometimes she got a little worse. She maybe go up to 3 a week. When COVID hit, that was terrible, because they actually closed the hospital, where the only place I can get the injections from. The doctor, the haematologist, phoned us up, asked us how many injections you had left. I told her I think it was one or two. And when I went back to the telephone, it was dead. So I must have rang her about 5 times. And at the time, being so vulnerable, she caught the flu. And she went to bed. I was keeping her there because I don't want to be in contact with people. And she was quite happy with that. And I got in touch with Limassol Hospital. The haematologist there just kept saying, bring her here. I said, I can't. She's not very well. She's in bed. I said, look, can you not just send a prescription through? Because you can only get a prescription from the General Hospital in Paphos, because they're the only ones that supply the injections.
So, David, David, the picture you paint, of course, there is that you became her full-time carer. Of course you would. You loved her.
Yeah.
But what was it...
Oh, yeah, I mean...
Yeah, what was it that happened in those last couple of months, as it now turned out? What happened to Janice's mind, her feelings, her thoughts, her pain, that made this awful decision that you had to make, something that you couldn't avoid in your mind, that you had to do it? What was it that led to that?
Well, she was suffering with diarrhea a lot, and she had quite a few nosebleeds. We went to hospital to see what we'd do about them, and did about 3 or 4 visits. And then the doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I think it's your disease. So she gradually got worse, and she wasn't comfortable, but she had to wear the diapers. And she would refuse to go out. She stayed in. And she didn't want to meet anybody. And she was getting so bad, looking so bad, she didn't want to answer the family or any friends or her brother, anybody on Facebook, because she didn't want them to see the way she was. And she was really ill. And we sat down one day, she says, look, I haven't got much living, time. She says, I'm going to die. And the thing is, she'd seen her sister die years ago with the same disease, or pretty much the same disease. And she said, I don't ever want to go through what my sister did. And she said, I want you to help me. Which I said, yeah. But 30 years down the line, you never think you're going to actually do it.
No.
So it got to the point where she said, look, I'm not worried about living anymore. She says, just there's no life left and we can't enjoy ourselves. I'm keeping you all the time. I said, yeah, it didn't bother me. I never went out. We just stayed together. That's when the illness got worse. And as it got worse, you know, it was hard in the mornings getting up, and at one point she couldn't come down the stairs. Right. And she shouted on us, and I had to...
David, do you remember...
Put on me back in the corridor. Yep.
David, do you remember the first time that Janice ever raised with you the idea that the right thing to do was for you to help her to take her own life? Do you remember how you felt when she first said that to you?
Yeah. She asked us about 6 weeks before it happened, I think it was, 6 to 8 weeks. And I said no. I just said, keep fighting. I couldn't take my wife's life. And I said, I can't. I don't want to hurt you. And she says, you can't hurt me any more than the pain I've got now. So she kept asking and asking, and I kept refusing. And I just said, we've got to fight her. And she says, no. In the last 2 weeks, she pressured me. She was begging me. So at one point, she got quite a circle. And I said, look, okay, I'll help you. But I said, I'll not tell you when, and I'll not tell you how. But I really didn't want to do it. No. It was trying to pacify her. And it was about 9 days later when it happened, because I was hoping in that time she'd change her mind. And she didn't. And mine was going through so much turmoil, asking help her. And then I thought, if my wife's asked me to help her die, what's she going through, mentally as well as physically?
David, did you ask anybody
for... I've got this.
David, did you ask anybody for help? Was there anybody you could ask for advice to help you, or did you just have to deal with this all on your own with Janice?
I had to deal it all on my own. She said that she would have flatly refused to go to hospital. She didn't want to go in hospital and stick with tubes, and it's just prolonging the life and just prolonging the agony, you know. So at the finish, I was just dealing with it. She was happy with that, and I was happy with that. Didn't bother me.
And David, I know that
the last.
Sorry, carry on.
I'm just saying, it was difficult. And once I realised how much my wife was going through in her mind, that I was on the point of saying, and I meant it, I was going to do it. But in the end, 10 days after I told her, I was hoping for a little miracle, like something would get better, the diarrhea would stop, or something like that. Of course. Or some pain. But it never did. It just got worse and worse. And you could see in her face. You could see in her face.
And David, of course, you then did carry out your wife's request.
And, I did.
And you then, of course, tried to take your own life afterwards, but you did end up in prison. And I just wonder whether, sitting here today, whether you think it was all worth it, in that you've had a terrible time in prison. We know we're going to talk to you a bit later on again, of course. Whether there was anything you could have done differently, or whether now you sit here thinking it was the only thing I could have done.
No. She was begging the last few days and crying all the time and in pain. And the pain seemed to attack where she'd had operations. She had 2 knee replacements. She had a broken collarbone, and it was affecting her, and she couldn't turn her head, and the pain was terrible. Her feet were red hot, and she was in really bad pain. The day I did it, I had no intention of doing that that day. And
David, on the day when you...
Coffee, for
David, on the day when you were standing in the court, waiting to hear the judges, the verdict and the sentencing, were you expecting to be going back to prison again for months, for years? And how did you feel about going back to prison after what you'd been through in the previous 2 years?
I expected about 5 years. I expected about 5 years, and I was prepared for it. I prepared my mind for it. I was prepared for the worst. And thank God to the jury. I just appreciate Michael Pollock and his two lawyers he employed. And my daughter, she's been fantastic.
And how bad would 5 more years have been, David?
No.
How bad would 5 more years have been? Because what was it like in that 19 months?
Well, after the first 2 months, you seem to get used to it. You get used to the system. And it's a strange system in Cyprus, I tell you. But you get used to the system. And the thing is, when you're in prison, you've got no worries. You've got your food coming. You got your cantina. That's another thing, like where we ordered stuff and it came. The food wasn't up to my taste. I mean, it's not what you get in the Cypriot restaurants. No. You know, black beans, white beans for breakfast.
No, and you were in a cell with 11 other people, weren't you? And you know, some horrible situations that people were on your bed and just you were scared a lot, weren't you, inside?
When I first went in, it was a bit really intimidating because I was the oldest in there. But I've got to say, the inmates just give me nothing but respect.
Okay.
Used to call me Mr. David.
Well, David, you're going to stay with us this morning because we've had a huge response from our viewers on your story and the issue around assisted dying and whether the law should be changed. We are also going to be joined by your daughter, who you've mentioned, shortly. So, David, for now, take a breather and have a glass of water and just take a moment. And we will be back with you shortly. It's a deeply compelling and very difficult story to listen to, but it is one that we're going to hear more about. So many responses from you this morning. If you've been affected by anything we're discussing this morning, there's support at itv.com/helplines.